Good evening. I'd like to call to order Planning Board meeting in Falmouth for October 3rd to order. The first thing on our agenda tonight is minutes from our past September 26th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of September 26, 2017 as drafted.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. And as I see, we have no approval not required plans in front of us tonight. The public comment part. Forgot about that. The public comment, if there's anyone here to talk about something that's not on our agenda, we will recognize you for a couple of minutes right now if you have something you need to say. Okay, moving forward. Public hearing continued. No, I already, I did say in out of order. I already know.
Okay.
Excuse me. So this is a continued hearing to see if the town of Falmouth will vote to rezone real property located at 4 Central Ave, East Falmouth, containing 33,474 square feet of land, map 32, parcel 4, lot 1, existing business 3 zoning and agricultural B zoning. And they want to change it to all business 3. Again, I want to remind everybody this is a hearing. So if anyone wants to speak on it, we're here to listen to everything you say. We're not here to debate any issues. We will eventually close the meeting and have a discussion, and then you'll hear what our thoughts are. But tonight is just to listen to what you want, and we take that into our decision-making, and then we discuss it later. So for the applicant, please identify yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Stephen McKenzie for Nicholson Street LLC and Dan McClone. I was not here last week. Dan came. I was stuck on the vineyard and I couldn't make the meeting. Presentation is very short. I'm not sure how Dan got along last week, but we have a piece of property that's shown up here in the corner, Central Ave and East Falmouth Highway, which has about 11,000 square feet of the Business 3 district and about 22,000 square feet in the Agricultural B district. When we came back before the Planning Board several months ago, we filed an application to build 2 duplex condominiums and 1 detached 4-car garage structure. That was going to be in the Agricultural District. But because it was a accessory building without any principal building in that same zoning district, the Planning Board asked us to remove it at that time, which we did. We also removed it from our special permit application before the Zoning Board of Appeals. We've since received the site plan review approvals here and the Zoning Board of Appeals special permit, and the condos are under construction. At this time, we'd like to rezone the property if we could and ask the board to support us with this at town meeting to make it all business 3 so that we can build the detached garage structure. There were no additional units proposed. Under our zoning bylaws, we could build 4.61 units on this size property, and we have 4 units already. So there's no additional units to be built. It's just trying to accommodate, give people safe parking and more storage. So we were looking to build along the lower portion there, right near where it says the AGB, 1 detached structure with 4 garage structures in it. And that's the reason for the request for the rezoning, and for no other reason than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sit down. Anyone else here to comment on this? Everyone's been heard? I'd like to close the hearing. Motion.
I move that we take this issue under advisement.
Second.
Go ahead.
You may want to simply move on your agenda, because we take it under advisement, and we can't discuss it anymore tonight, and you'll see on your agenda further down, you have recommendations for zoning articles for the annual town meeting.
So the hearing's closed, and we'll move on and see
I
if
think you need to simply close the hearing, you've heard the testimony, and then move on.
Okay.
Otherwise, you preclude yourself from discussing it under your recommendations.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion.
we will have time to do it again. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for Robert Paul's definitive plan to subdivide 2.5 acres into 2 lots at 02 Terre Haute Drive, map 35-01-003 for Holmes and McGrath. So I've opened the meeting, and I think I'm just going to close the meeting because we have a request. No?
You should read the letter that's in the record.
Oh, we have, okay.
From the applicant.
Well, but you want to read the letter? Sorry.
Reference definitive plan to subdivide 2.56 acres, Robert Paul, 0 Terre Haute Drive, our job number 217100. Board members, please accept this letter as a request to withdraw without prejudice the pending application for Robert Paul to subdivide land off Hillcrest Drive in Falmouth, Mass. Sincerely, Holmes and McGrath, Michael B. McGrath.
Okay.
Is there any other public comment?
Any comment on this? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Motion to,
I move that we vote to accept the request to withdraw from Mr. Pauls.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving right along here. The next item on our agenda, the applicant Sandlin Family Trust, a definitive plan to subdivide existing single-family lot into 8 lots, BBS design. Notices.
Mr. Chairman, the notice of public hearing was published on 9/15, 9/22, and 9/29, 2017, and 31 abutters were notified by certified mail return receipt.
For the applicant,
Good evening. I'm Bob Ament. I'm the attorney for the Sandlin family, the applicant in this case. Most of you who've been here over the past couple of years are familiar with the property. It's approximately 7 acres, extremely large piece of property for the Mara Vista area. And as you know, surrounded by many small homes. And the proposal is to divide the parcel into 7 lots. You have the plans on you that is on the computer, and I will try to get them to advance, but maybe I need to go to the computer to do it.
Is it on?
Sorry?
Is it on?
Well, maybe not. That'd be a start. I may need your help.
We've seen it.
Okay.
so we're going to need you to go back to the microphone. Or no one at home will hear what you say.
Thank you. So the planning board approved the division, and Brian would advance the plan. We should see that this is the plan and profile for what's been approved. The next plan is the actual subdivision, which would be good to show too. Okay, so there's that's the plan that approved 8 lots. The roadway, I recall, is 475 feet long. The planning board approved it. I think it was 18 feet wide with a 1-foot berm. And a group of neighbors, most of the neighbors on the north side of Cypress Street, filed an appeal of the decision. We are here based on an order of the land court on a motion, joint motion from both parties to remand the case for approval of a revised plan. And the slides that you next have, or the images, are the plan that all the parties have agreed to. Well, can we advance it, Brian? Thank you. So this is the plan that's approved. It's virtually the same layout of lots. The difference is that the road has been extended, I believe, to about 634 feet, maybe less than that, but on the plan and profile, that will show. That's the older plan and profile. So the last plan should be and I'm sorry that this isn't working.
I think that's the original. That's the new.
That's the one.
So we have lengthened the road a bit. We've agreed to make it 20 feet wide with a 1-foot berm on the south side. And the plaintiffs in the case, the neighbors across the street, were particularly concerned that there not be shared driveways with a turnaround in a particular location where driveways would meet, and there'd be several driveways at one point. So the plan as revised has frontage for each lot on the existing road with a requirement that each have its own driveway, and we have not shown a turnaround. Now, there are no streets at all in Mara Vista that have a turnaround, and we're only going halfway down the road. Now, the settlement provides that the neighbors on the other side of the street will actually continue the pavement, and they're planning to continue it down to the last lot, 20 feet wide. That's not part of our subdivision request. It's not required to serve the lots that we're creating. To the extent that the extended pavement is within jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, the plaintiffs would need to go to the Conservation Commission. That's provided for in the remand motion and the decision of the court. But it doesn't involve the creation of any new lots down there, and so I'm informing you of it because it is part of the settlement that the neighbors may do that, but it isn't part of the subdivision. So, in summary, the proposed road is a little bit longer, still ends away from the flood zone before it starts to slope down towards the water. Same number of lots, a little wider road, and this has the support of the neighbors as well as the Sandlin family, of course. Any questions? I'll try to answer them.
I think we've seen a lot of this. I don't think anyone else have a question? Any questions from the public?
Jim, can I ask a question?
You can, yeah.
Any plans for any sidewalk?
No, and there was no sidewalk on the approved plan. And there are no sidewalks on any of the streets in Mara Vista. The history of this is that for various reasons this lot was never developed, but it's a town road on the other side on Cedar Street, town road on Mara Vista. But when the planning board approved the division of the property into 3 lots in 1995, the planning board simply said that to further divide the property, even though it was on streets shown on those plans, on very old streets, that the plan should come back to the planning board for review as to the adequacy of the ways. We're only creating a few lots. I think it's 3 additional houses on the south side of the street. One of the lots will have a house on it, and to serve those, a sidewalk would be something that none of the other town lots, streets in Mara Vista have.
Thank you.
John?
There's a sentence in here that sentence in here that says, modify approved subdivision plan in the following respects. The proposed turnaround street layout shall be eliminated, but not the proposed T pavement to provide turning area for emergency vehicles. Excuse me, and I do not see that on the plan we have in front of us.
That's right. It was taken off after the remand because the town planner felt if it wasn't within the town layout, he did not want to see it on the plan. We still have shown the drainage on the plan.
And is that acceptable to
Yes, that's
to the
acceptable.
plaintiffs?
That's acceptable to all the parties, and I have a letter, actually brought an email from their attorney saying he wasn't going to come tonight because the parties are all in agreement as to the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment.
Yes?
Lot number 1 is in the A&E zone, is that correct?
It's not part of the subdivision, though.
Well, let's take a look. So,
Okay, this is,
yes, if we could take a look at lot 1, Brian. Thank you.
existing.
A portion of Lot 1 is in flood zone, in an A flood zone. A portion of it's within Conservation Commission jurisdiction, but there's a building envelope that is outside even Conservation Commission jurisdiction or a flood zone. But of course, in an A zone, you can build. It's simply an issue of not being able to have a basement.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public? Would you please come up, identify yourself?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Michael McGurty. I'm the owner of the property at 10 Cypress Street. I'm here representing a number of my family members, and basically all the neighbors are in agreement with this plan being better than the original plan. It does widen the road. It doesn't bring the road to the full length that we would have hoped that it would have been, but if this is the best we can come up with in an agreement, we would accept it. One question I do have is where the turnaround is not there, that still would require that this board to grant a waiver, I believe, under your subdivision rules and regulations. Is that not correct? Turnaround for subdivision? So wouldn't this board have to grant that waiver, which we don't have an objection to, but for procedural purposes, would you not have to vote on that?
We don't have a turnaround in front of us.
Isn't that part of the subdivision rules and regulations on a roadway that is one of the requirements in the subdivision under your own rules that would have a turnaround? I'm just asking for procedural purposes. Again, we're not disputing
Well,
the
it's not on
waiver.
our plan. Brian, is a requirement of our,
We'll review the
Well-
situation when we motion, we'll put a motion.
we'll discuss it, yeah. We'll take
So
that into
it-
consideration,
okay, so
thank you.
it isn't a waiver, then it's not required? I'm just asking the question. I'm
We
just-
will take your comments under consideration
Okay,
when it comes to up.
okay. And other than that, we hope the board will move forward on this, so
Okay.
we'll go from there. Thank you.
Anyone else? So everyone's been heard on this issue? Mr. Ament?
Just very briefly, I'd point out that that case law holds that if the plan shows what would be seemingly require a waiver of the planning board rules and regulations, and it's shown on the plan, or not shown in this case, and the plan is approved, then the waiver is deemed granted.
So everyone's been heard? Okay, I'll close the hearing. Motion to take it under advisement?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do you want to
There
second?
was a second, yeah.
Yep, I saw a second, I'm sorry.
Who was the second?
Second.
Pam, I thought you were seconding, or you say you were voting already, excuse me. I was too quick?
Jim, I seconded.
You did, that's what I thought.
I mean, I hadn't before, but
Yeah,
I
you did now,
just
okay.
did.
For the record, Pam seconded. I anticipated her second, I'm sorry. Okay. Now we're going to move on to discussions of our zoning articles. Thank you. If you're all leaving, please leave quickly and
Quiet.
quietly, please, because we would like to continue our business.
So I figure.
So, Brian, I don't have a list of the zoning articles on the, oh, in the package, okay. It's not on the agenda.
Should be after a bunch of those letters.
So I'll march down that list in order. Is this it?
No. The very end, very last page. No, this-
Yeah, I'll take yours.
Yeah, take one.
Oh, here it is. It's this next page. I got it. Article, to see if the town of Falmouth will vote to rezone real property located at 4 Central Avenue, East Falmouth, containing 33,474 square feet of land, being map 32, section 4, parcel 1, lot 1, from existing B3, business 3, and agricultural B zoning districts to all B3, and to reflect and amend the official zoning map to show such changes and take any action thereof. So, we've closed the public hearing, so this is now a discussion amongst ourselves. Does anyone have any comment on this, or any questions?
I just, when you have a lot that is split zone, I think I'd like to see it tidied up in just one zone or the other. So I would be in agreement with changing that and allowing that change.
I was concerned about buffering, but there is already a requirement for a buffer from uses from one zone to another, so
Yeah.
I don't have a concern because of that buffering that's already required, yeah.
It's been our policy for some time that whenever the opportunity arises that we can do away with a split zone on a lot, we should do that.
Jim, question?
Yes,
It is required to have a buffer. What does the required buffer consist of? Just for my
20
information.
feet, am I correct, Brian?
20 feet of just...
You
could be
can't
any-
have a use on one parcel that's not allowed in an adjoining parcel unless you're at least 20 feet away. So you can't have a commercial building 10 feet off the property line with a 10-foot setback. It's going to be at least 20 feet. It's a use type thing.
That's clear.
So it's
And can it be just plain open land, or does it have to have trees on it? Is there any
I think
requirement?
it's just the use. I don't believe it has anything to do,
The use has to maintain enhanced setback, but it can be, you have to have vegetation.
Okay, I just wondered.
no, it's
Thank
not
you.
like a buffer zone with vegetation and all that.
Yeah.
It's just
Space.
a use can't be pushed up against another zoning. It's a setback on the use side.
Okay, thanks.
Pat?
I will move that we vote to recommend this to the town meeting warrant, fall town meeting warrant,
As printed.
as printed.
As printed.
Second.
She beat you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
One comment, please. I noticed that the figure is labeled Article 6, so there's been assigned Article 6, so the minutes should reflect Article 6 when we put them together.
Somebody has to write that up.
I will make sure, yes, it's,
This is so it can get printed in the warrant right now, right? Okay, so
But
it
it's
will
been
be.
assigned a number, so we should use it.
that number can change,
Yeah.
so that's why we always leave them blank.
Yeah,
Because the warrant
but it's
hasn't
been
been-
identified in the figures. All right. The figures have been identified with a number, so somebody assigned a number.
You might be looking at the wrong piece there.
It's been, just so you know, it's been assigned a number,
Oh, that, okay, that one.
but that could change.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's why we never put a number.
Moving along,
Things
to
around.
see if the town of Falmouth will vote to amend the official zoning map of the town of Falmouth so as to rezone from AGA to light industrial C, 2 parcels of land located off Blacksmith Shop Road, Falmouth, in Hatchville, which parcels are shown in the Falmouth Assessors Map 22, Section 2, Parcel 9, Falmouth Assessors Map 22, Section 2, Parcel 12003, or take any other action on this matter on request of Christopher Lynch and others. So, Pat, do you have?
Yeah, this has been troubling me, so I've given more thought to it, because there are uses that would be allowed if it were rezoned to light industrial C that perhaps would not be compatible with the smaller housing here, smaller housing lots. If I look at the map that was presented to us, where they want to put the solar arrays on here, it almost looks like we could say, well, okay, rezone and describe where the solar arrays are. And then you have a sufficient buffer that already pretty much exists around where they propose to do it and around the sand pits. The sand pits are pretty much unusable for other things. I would suspect they're ugly. But it was portrayed to us that there is an awful lot of wildlife that uses this too. So if we could ask that they look at that again and re-describe those parcels in there for rezoning. And then, so it wouldn't be the whole 65 acres. And then the other is still left as it currently is, which is AGA.
Yes, Sean?
Once again, just a question. Is it true that if this rezoning takes place, they then have to come back to the planning board with a site plan for the solar array? And that would be the time then to put restrictions on it or conditions, or does that have to be done now?
Well, it would be a by right use.
So they don't have to come back?
Well, they're just asking for
I don't think they
rezoning of the
do.
land.
I
Right.
don't think they do. The site plan review is triggered by 2 things, 5 parking and 1,000 square feet of new building. And I don't believe it triggers it. No matter how big it is, I don't think there is a site plan review.
So an array is not a building? Oh,
When the landfill was rezoned for that purpose, the board didn't review a plan for the solar arrays at the landfill.
so if the board wanted to put conditions on it, as Pat has suggested, it would have to be now?
Right, we may have to make our recommendations, yes, now.
Recommendations?
This was a landfill.
Yes.
This was the
That is,
landfill.
the applicant has requested the entire 65 acres of the 2 parcels to be rezoned light industrial C. What I'm hearing Pat say, she would prefer to see perhaps
Smaller area?
a much smaller area away from the boundaries. If you put a 150-foot buffer around the inside line, you know, put solar arrays or contractor's yard or a warehouse, sounds like the board would be more accepting of that. And then you would have a very large separation between existing homes and whatever goes in. It could be those other uses besides solar.
I have a question for you, Brian. When,
See if I can find that other slide. Go ahead, listen.
you know, we always get challenged by, and we might be on town meeting, it's spot zoning. And is this part of, that we got around before, it was part of a long-range plan?
Right, in other words, you were challenged when you rezoned that parcel on Tom Landers Road, spot zoning challenge. And you remember the Attorney General
Said it wasn't.
because it was part of your planning process. This is where you want solar arrays or these uses together. And you were looking at that time, incentives.
Right.
You talked to Mr. Russo, you were looking at some, you were looking at other parcels, not this one in particular. But spot zoning challenge is very, very difficult to study. It's even fairly debatable. So you were pretty much on solid ground here for spot zoning.
Okay.
If we follow Pat and Brian's suggestion, is it possible to build into that wildlife corridors? Because that's one of the workarounds that turned out to be common for this very kind of problem. So that rather
Anything's
than one
possible.
single thing where you're just outlining it with the buffer zone, you have two area, I don't know how you want to break it up, but areas within it that are okay, and probably down in a pit somewhere for the solar array, but you leave room for the creatures to come across.
It looks like we have high-tension lines going right through the middle of this thing. Is that what I see there? Big
Right.
path, right? It's kind of
Right.
subdivided, and those are power lines going.
They've really already created one.
Yeah, I think it's already there.
Right, but because they
But
apparently need,
do we put, in zoning, do we actually, put wildlife corridors? We don't have a wildlife corridor zone that I'm aware of.
Yeah, this is in the overlay district for wildlife migration.
Okay.
So you're supposed to be anywhere from a 50-foot to a 300-foot
But that happens under site plan review, right?
in subdivisions.
And subdivisions.
So if you have areas that are not zoned and they stay agricultural, let's just say for the sake
Okay,
of
that's how to do it. Leave them agricultural A.
all you do is rezone those areas.
We could accomplish it with the zoning, is the answer to your
And then by
question.
default, like Lower Road, you got that little dirt
Yeah.
road to the south there. You still have areas that the north to south migrations can occur because you have those intrinsic areas. Plus you have power, they can't. Right? So by default,
you've got it.
Yeah.
So how do you word a thing like that? Just the blue areas? I don't think you could say that.
You make that request to the petitioner.
Yeah, we have them come back
That the board is more interested.
and show a different plan.
Plan, and it's up to them to describe it.
Pat?
The reason I really like it just rezoning the blue areas and maybe a margin around them, obviously, to give construction room
Yeah.
in there, is that if you say 150 feet, well, there are some areas where you can't make 150 feet on here, and that's public property there. And there are other big pieces there that we might want to retain open. So we wouldn't want to say, okay, well, just 150 feet around it, and then you can do whatever you want to do. That was my reasoning on that, just rezoning the blue.
I just thought, I agree with everything you want to say, but we just commented about how we didn't want to have split zoning on a lot. We're about to really carve it up here.
But there's a really
Okay.
good reason
It
for
just
doing
dawned, it
this.
just dawned on me. Going down, I'll come to you next. Anything, John?
Listening to the neighbors, they had no opposition to the solar.
Right.
Their concern is if it's light industrial C, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, that something that they wouldn't want to have there could be done by right. And what we're discussing has good merit to it. I was wondering, would it be easier to change or ask the town meeting to change where solar could be approved, like on a 50-acre parcel or more, and not be in light industrial C? I don't know how many 50-acre parcels would be
Not
available.
necessarily. That might be something for a future time. but not-
I didn't know which would be easier to try to solve this problem.
Town meeting wanted to reserve to itself where these large, megawatt level solar arrays were. So you would have to go back to them with another article at a future town meeting to say you would like to make it part of the permit process instead.
See, I agree with John, where I would think it would be easier to change where you could put them as opposed to having to rezone every parcel that might be a viable option for this. And, yeah.
Just, if I could just back up. So, okay, you wanted to make it a permit process in a district. So let's say, which district? Any district? You're talking town-wide, just like gravel mining? I'm just trying to...
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a gravel mining bylaw. You can gravel mine anywhere in town.
Mhm.
You would have this in use essentially anywhere in town, subject to some performance stage.
Yeah, special permit,
That's a different ball of wax for another town meeting for sure.
yeah.
Because we have a very long list of performance standards for sand and gravel mining,
Mhm.
reclamation.
Yeah.
So
Let's discuss that. What are they required to do under the existing zoning right now? Okay, they were going to abandon this gravel pit.
These pits are very, very old. They go back 30, 40-ish years. So they predate the more modern gravel mining bylaw that we produced back in the early 90s. So they're essentially pre-existing non-conforming uses.
Okay, so they're not bound by that reclamation word I heard. So they can leave them.
Correct.
Okay.
And as far as the wildlife part of thing, to carve out areas where you expect animals to go,
They go where they want to go.
They're going to go where they want. I mean, if you get coyotes in Central Park in Manhattan, you'll get animals to walk around this. So I wouldn't make any sense to
So,
make something special, some condition for that.
so what I'm hearing from everybody, looking at that right there, the blue thatched area, we're saying that's the area we would like to see this come back and ask for rezoning and leave everything else the way it is.
Yeah.
Is that where we're going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good compromise, even though
It
we are looking at
solves the
splitting
issue.
up a
It creates
parcel.
one issue, but I think
Yeah.
it solves the bigger issue, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it really speaks to their concerns, which is, down the road, if you had just those pieces of blue that contain the solar.
Then I can see it.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How deep is that pit now?
Vertical, the groundwater practice, I'm sure it's down elevation 10, 15.
So do they have to bring it up in order to put the solar array? They can put it 15 feet down,
It takes pretty good in there.
They might have to do a little regrading,
I would think.
but they can get, these panels are all adjustable,
know.
so they can just,
I think,
Just another question that the neighbors brought up, and maybe the way you discussed it, it's the same thing, I'm not sure. But why couldn't this be done with a variance to preclude the other uses that you could have in industrial?
Because we don't do use variances,
We don't,
no.
because,
Because they were done in the past, but I'll let Brian speak this, but I'm familiar with them, the court said no more. They're not allowed.
No, town meeting took that out. The zoning act prior to 1975, you had to have it. In 1975, 78, the zoning act changed, made the option of the town. I think the town back around 1978 removed them from the zoning bylaw, the use variances. You only have dimensions.
Okay.
Falmouth did that, but that's not state law.
Town meeting.
The town meeting removed the use variances from the local zoning bylaw back in the 70s.
Okay, just locally. I mean, other towns can do as they choose.
Some towns have them, but very few. But
I've come across them, but they're
It's not an
very
option here,
older properties.
as was suggested in use variance.
so just to conclude that part, all the options that we could consider to achieve the effect we seem to want, we've already discussed. Okay.
It's a map.
It's
all
kind
needed.
of, this is why we created the light industrial C, because we
Ah.
couldn't create use variances, we couldn't do all these things, so that's how we got to where we are.
Ah,
One
okay.
other thing too, because all of the light industrial property also allowed residential, and that's what it was being built up as.
Right.
Oh,
That's how it got created. Every part of our industrial land was all built into housing, and we lost all our industrial land, and all the workers came to us and said, you can't do this anymore, we have no place to put our contractors' yards, our shops, we're all moving to Bourne. So we created light industrial C to solve that issue, and then we said no housing in it.
that's how Sandwich turned itself into such a high-tax district. They precluded everything they thought wasn't pretty. Well, they weren't wrong about the pretty, but it was bad for business.
So do we want to move, I'm going to ask a question, do we want to move a recommendation to town meeting, or that,
You would need a better description. You don't have a description.
that's right, we
We can't
don't.
do anything.
The motion should be as per a plan entitled.
So,
So we're going to delay decision on this then.
I would, for sure, yeah, you wouldn't want to walk into town meeting and say, we want you to rezone that area and look. They would say, how much is that? Can you describe it? And you would be able to.
So we want to throw this back to the proponent
It's the petition process.
yeah,
and say, do it, make it right.
Contact the petitioner's attorney and say, look, this is what you have to do. And go back to see the board on the next meeting.
so they would still have time for town meeting to get it together.
Up until Monday night at 7 o'clock. Monday night in November or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so this will stay, they could change it right up until town meeting starts then.
We can change it on town meeting floor.
They can change it on town meeting floor. Okay.
2 minutes.
So that gives them plenty of time if they're nimble enough.
Right. Remember,
But we won't see it again
these are,
to make the recommendation.
yes, you'll see this at your next meeting.
Oh, okay, see that.
We have to recommend something.
It would be
Yeah, okay.
either IP or a
And
revised
If you can't come up with a recommendation, you simply like to.
IP it.
Everybody all set? Moving on along. To see if the town will vote to amend section 240-4, previously issued permits. This is the pre-existing non-conforming thing. No, by deleting the word 6 months and inserting in its place the words 12 months, so as to read in its pertinent part, unless the use or construction is commenced with a period of 12 months after the issuance of the permit. And this is because we have so many different permits you need, it's really hard to get it done in 6 months.
It extends the, you're right, the protection of a building permit from 6 to 12 months if there's an intervening zone change.
Right.
I have a question. What I don't quite understand is if someone has completed all the permitting and doesn't begin construction in 6 months, what you're saying is you have to begin the construction within 12 months, not 6 months. But you just said.
Well, they
because
can
it
come and dig a
take-
hole and it starts the construction, yeah.
That's what a lot of people do. Okay.
Just waiting to see if any other questions or comments. I'd like to hear a motion.
Okay, so I move that we recommend this to the warrant as printed.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. To see if the town will vote to amend section 240-221, the Code of Falmouth, lapsed by deleting the words 2 years and inserting in its place the words 3 years, so as to read in its pertinent part, a special permit granted under this article shall lapse within 3 years from the date it is granted. Similar type reasoning. Any questions?
Yeah. So that just means that, you always look at the abutters, that instead of this completion within 2 years, they have to deal with construction or whatever for an additional year. have 3 years to complete it.
No. No, it means they, if they don't, to amend, if you don't act on the special permit. There was a great example in North Falmouth on Pine Road, Pine Street, that there was a permit granted to renovate a hotel into a housing project, and they missed it by a day, and they had to do a 40B. It took 2 more years to get it done. It was hours. It's well, it's not famous, but it's something I remember. So it's because it's so complicated now to get everything in order that people are getting caught up in the time frame, and it's just a request to be more reasonable. Do you have any concerns with that, Pam?
Well, I just think dragging things out sometimes isn't always in the town's best interest. I mean, I think if someone gets a special permit, that it's really up to them to get it done in 2 years. They can always come back and ask for an extension, right?
It's not the construction. Get the construction done in 2 years. It's the act on your special permit. Your construction could take 6 years, or 10 years, or 6 months. You have to act on your special permit. It might be mortgage and relies upon it.
Yeah.
Or you do something and relies upon your special permit. But it's not tied to your length of construction. It's when you activate that permit.
But if you have a permit and it would lapse in 2 years, don't you have the option of coming back and extending?
You have to come back to the planning board, and the planning board then must vote, some sort of good cause, which they may or may not do. And what we're finding today is that because of the financial environment that we're in, the regulatory environment that we're in, 2 years, it's been 2 years for the last 30 years. But things like Jim said are a little more complicated today. State law changed after 48. They set the ceiling. The ceiling for many years was 2 years in Chapter 48. The legislature just voted to amend Chapter 48 to go to 3 years. It's a town option. You could stay at 2, or we could follow the legislature's lead and go to 3. It's your option. But it's a true hardship out there for folks to get everything lined up sometime within 2 years. There could be an appeal. You might get your zoning permits, but you might have an appeal in your conservation permit. So things just sometimes take time. It's not tied to the duration of your construction. You don't
Okay.
finish your construction.
I don't have an issue with being in compliance with the state. I don't think we have to be more restrictive.
It's not compliance with the state.
I don't mean compliance, but I mean, that's what-
They
right.
say you see them.
Then I don't have a problem.
You might go 2.5, you could go 1. Many times I'm seeing the 3-year option.
Fine.
Everybody good?
Yep.
So I move that we recommend this to the warrant as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We'll let you cut, and absolutely done.
Don't see the purple folder. That's where our general correspondence resides, so there is not. Let's talk about future agenda items.
You do it.
agree.
Leaving you aside, we would like to discuss multifamily zoning at our next meeting, and as part of that, to discuss form-based zoning.
I think discussing it, you have to have all the information in front of you and understand it in order to really discuss it. And is everyone all familiar with form-based zoning? Okay, never mind.
Probably not as familiar as we should be with it, though, for application purposes.
I think we
Okay,
can
but we're
start
talking about two
discussing
different
it.
things here. Form-based zoning are we talking about applying it to just one region only? and testing it out, like, for instance, on Davis Straits, or we're gonna just change form-based zoning to our whole town everywhere?
Okay, I can expand on that. I thought that at, not this meeting, but the prior one, we had discussed, having met with Brian, that we would like to use the Davis Strait plan as our boundaries for this discussion now, so that it's not a widespread concern, but it has a very limited amount of space that, in town that we're talking about, applying this and using it. And Brian has gone further, actually, and delimited a smaller area within it, which we could do, because there's more reality to that. The streets there already exist. But I think for purposes of going forward on a public education program, on bringing things to a joint meeting, on just discussing it, if we say that it's the Davis Strait plan area, and the Davis Strait plan is already out there, that would be good. And so, yes, it's within that area only, right now. Probably for a long time, too.
50 years, maybe?
No.
Well,
that
you
was
know,
the
wait a
plan.
second. We talked, oh, this Davis Strait's gonna be 50 years. Okay, we're 6 months into it, and we're already bringing things forward about changing the zoning. So I don't know if we can keep saying that 50 years.
I think we shouldn't, and I think we should.
No, I just wanted to point that
Just
out.
move ahead. I mean, that's,
I think, I'm fine with it. I think it'd be a good idea. We have to get to the actual reality of what the changes. She's talking about discussion on form-based zoning.
Or just what is form-based?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I checked in Brian's office, and I did actually not communicate correctly. I intended to, but I didn't know enough to do it right. And in the future,
Stick your hand out.
right, that happened.
No,
I'm
we've
better
all-
now.
We've all been slapped for doing it. That's why I sent you the email. I did it
Oh.
at the beginning, and Brian said, don't do that again.
Okay, well, if I send it
Emails,
to Brian's
everything
office,
goes to Brian, and Brian sends out to us. That's the way
Right.
it goes.
You had a,
but it would have been CC'd to Brian if I had had his
No, no.
email address correct.
No, but you
I
need to send
didn't.
it to him first.
First,
And then
yes.
he sends it to us.
That was my lesson.
Email communication through members.
serial
Yes,
email communication.
that's an open meeting law violation.
Right.
Form of the board is a violation of the open.
Yeah, that's a flat-out open meeting violation. No policy procedure, it's
Oh,
just
I'm
not allowed.
glad there's not a prison sentence. So,
Yeah.
Yes, there's a,
so going forward, but it turned out that link, actually, when you look through piles of different links, that link is really, in a way, authoritative, whereas the others are scattered all over the place. So it would give a focus to our discussion
So
if we
just
had that
to
as
be
a
clear for the newer
background.
members, no group emails. Everything goes
Right.
to Brian and then back out again. That's the way it goes. If you want something on our meeting, you send it to Brian, and he sends it to us. That way we stay within the open meeting law.
Right.
or the two board members can communicate.
Right. You can't
The
do,
quorum of the board cannot deliberate via email.
you can't just send it
Right.
to 4
you
people.
can't
Oh,
go back
wait.
and forth. I could send it to everybody and not have any discussion. If I said, I would like to discuss X, Y, and Z,
You're deliberating.
no, you're not. Unless somebody gets back
I'm
to
not here to
me.
debate it with you.
We've been
The
told
board
in the
has
past
for
not to
many
do it.
years avoided any appearance of that. And I suggest to this board and to all its members that you continue to do so.
It encourages good ideas, send to all, and that's where we break the rule, when you
Right.
send it.
No, I
And
think
if it
it's an
comes
easy
from
rule
Brian,
to
it's
follow. I
okay.
think
It's
sending it
okay.
to Brian's office,
I think
first of all,
it's- I think
he's
it's wise.
he's running an archive over there, and then we don't have to.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons to do it, aside from doing the right thing.
What's that?
It's not hard to comply with it, don't worry, it's easy.
Right. So we can do that.
If you care not to, that's up to you, you all go. But
No,
my
no.
advice to the board is.
That's fine.
don't do it.
Brian, that's absolutely fine.
But we'll talk through a form-based code on the 17th. I won't have any specific examples for our Straits here, but we might need to bring them on the 18th.
And just sort of an overall, so that, you know, everybody can understand that it's a transition from what we've been doing to
Right.
form-based.
Yeah, and we did this, some of the other board members that require, remember, they were in their eye. One of us gave you a presentation on form-based code for Davis Straits.
Well, we've been talking about this for several years.
So we'll do a refresher.
But in general, it would take away the uses from the buildings we're allowing in Davis Straits and just talk about what the building looks like, the form, the shape, the height, the color, everything about it. And if it's whatever use they want, within reason.
That's one approach, as you'll see, but you can do a kind of a combination of both. You don't have to have it an either-or.
Gradations.
Right.
Yep,
So,
it's a continuum.
But I think it would be good to tie it specifically to some of the recommendations about the buildings that were recommended as part of the Davis Straits. They had buildings on certain intersections
Yep.
and sizes and types of buildings. That would be, if form-based, we could say, well, form-based zoning would allow all of this. I think it would.
Sounds like we're having the discussion already.
Oh, well. Good idea, Bob. I just want to know what we're talking about. Yes, John?
If we're going to discuss multifamily housing, which is great, but we have a bylaw that we passed for accessory apartment bylaws, accessory apartment bylaw, and we've only had one applicant. And it seems the reason for that is because of the conflict with the Board of Health. So if we're going to do multifamily housing, I think we need to solve the Board of Health situation.
Except this
At the same
multifamily
time
house is
or
going on the
before.
sewer, so the Board of Health is not going to have a problem with it.
All multifamily housing
No,
is going
this
to be...
particular
Just
one
in
is
the
only
area of
on
Davis
this one
Straits.
particular area, and it's on the sewer, and that's why we can do that without having...
I didn't know multifamily housing was only going to be discussed in the Davis Straits area.
That is the limitation of this discussion at this time. It
This
could
was the
expand
beginning,
beyond that, but
Just the beginning.
we're talking about, actually not even the whole Davis Straits. There's a section in the middle that you shared that with
That's what I
everyone,
recommend.
Brian, didn't we? I've seen some.
But John is bringing up a different point about the accessory apartment bylaw that was passed. I have additional information for the board. For the next agenda, I can bring you up to speed with some additional applications, you can assume some more. Perhaps the issue will be cured.
That would be
So
good
we'll
news.
put that on the agenda, future
Yes,
agenda
for
item.
your future agenda item, I'll bring you up to speed on the accessory apartment bylaw.
Okay.
We'll be seeing, I believe, two more. Unfortunately, one was withdrawn, so they're starting to come in.
Starting to trickle in.
And then all of a sudden, you know,
There.
so
Good. Well, thank you very much.
yeah.
Any other agenda items? Okay, next meeting, October 14th, 2007, and October 17th, two scheduled meetings,
And we'll be meeting the 24th.
and the 24th, 4 in a row.
We are putting together an agenda for the 14th. We will be talking about resiliency. We will be talking about use of town land and buildings.
States the 10th.
We'd like to bring the public in a second up to speed on your Davis Straits initiatives. It won't be as
The 10th.
a this meeting as
I mean, the
first
14th.
suggested, most of which will be reports.
Yeah, but you see, the 20th.
I think right now the venue, so the hour will be changed to 8:30. And we're working on a venue at the Falmouth Cap.
And which, is this the, which night? The 14th.
Go to join.
The joint meeting's on the 14th. Well, that completes
will
the
that start on
agenda
the
in front of
14th?
me.
I'm sorry?
What time are we starting on the 14th?
8:30.
8:30. That's what it was, wasn't it?
Is it 8?
Just now 8:30?
Are some of those items selectmen recommendations?
The resiliency is a joint
Recommendation.
recommendation. The use of town-owned land, the buildings, I believe, from this board, and your initiatives in Davis Straits, this board.
Pretty much our agenda.
The selectmen. You will not be-
Paul? Yeah.
I advised your office that I would be absent on the 24th. That week I'll be out of the country. So I did make that point made a couple of weeks ago. If anyone else is missing.
Lucky you.
About
So I
time.
move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Where are you
Opposed,
going to
none?
go?